You know him, you love him. Him is Greg Cosell. He joins us every Thursday at this time. Greg had maybe the most eventful trade deadline I can remember in a while. And so I wanted to ask you about some of the more notable players that switch teams, what you think of them, and what you think of them with their new teams. So, of course, Greg from NFL Films at Greg Cosell on Twitter. Let's start with Bradley Chubb, who actually just signed a new contract for big, big money, 120 million, 119 actually, over the next 5 years in Miami after being traded from the Denver Broncos. Your thoughts on Chubb in general and in particular how he fits into Miami, Greg?
Yeah, I think Miami made a couple of good moves, actually. Chubb's a good player. He's an edge pass rusher. You never have enough of those guys. We talked about that with Robert Quinn. You never have enough edge pass rushers in this league. He's a good player. So he now is added to a defense that has a lot of different pieces to it. I think they've struggled in the secondary this year with injuries, but he's a good pass rusher. And they do a lot of things up front. They like to be very, very aggressive with how they play. And I think they've not been able to do that quite as much because of the issues in the secondary. But Chubb will certainly add pass rush. If I could, I think that the Jeff Wilson trade, which maybe is under the radar a little bit, is a really important trade as well. Because Jeff Wilson obviously came from the Niners, where he played for Mike McDaniel. And they've struggled to run the ball. Now, Tua has been outstanding, and that offense is really about as well schemed as any offense in the NFL right now. But they have not been able to run the ball with the consistency that I know Mike McDaniel would want. And I think the Wilson trade is an important trade as well.
Listen, we don't talk about money much with you, Greg, because the money is the money. I guess I've never thought of Chubb as being an elite player. You used the word good.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to describe him. It feels like giving up a first round pick and paying him the money they are. It feels like, I don't know, I guess it kind of feels to me like the Dolphins think he's an elite player. And I'm not sure I've ever thought he was really an elite player or one of the best in the league at his spot.
Well, I guess the question there's two parts to that. It's what Chubb is, and I would agree with you. But the second part is different teams value draft choices differently. We've seen over the years there are some teams that do not want to part with any draft choices. And as soon as you say first round pick or second round pick, that ends any conversation because they want to hoard their draft choices. And there's certainly merit in that. There's no right or wrong here. And then there's other teams that might take the belief that, hey, a draft pick is a maybe. Chubb is a player who's played in the league. We have tape on him. We know what he is. He's a good player, and he can come in and help us right now. We don't know who we're going to be drafting in 2023. That guy could end up being a good player or not a good player. We know what Bradley Chubb is. So that's a question about value of draft choices, and teams view that differently, as you well know.
Good point. Really good point. What about Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears? I found very interesting, Greg. Especially as a rookie, he made so many plays. He's clearly physically gifted, but also seems like he was always spending time in Mike Tomlin's doghouse.
Yeah.
I don't know. What did you see on video from Claypool?
Yeah, I think Claypool, I remember him very well coming out of Notre Dame. And I based on his Notre Dame tape, I did not think he was a big-time prospect. Now, he went to the combine at 6'4", 238, Ross, and ran a 4.38. And you know how that works. When a player that size, particularly a receiver, runs with that kind of speed, automatically, in the eyes of many, that increases his draft value, and he became a second-round pick. That first year in Pittsburgh, he made some big explosive plays on vertical routes, and he was also used jet sweeps that way as well. It hasn't quite worked out the last couple of years. There could be many, many reasons for that, probably too many to get into right now. So the question is, how will he be deployed in an offense in Chicago that is trying to massage Justin Fields into being a quality NFL quarterback. So they're running the ball a lot. They're using Fields on a lot of design runs. They don't necessarily throw it a lot relative to other NFL teams. But now you've got two players who are vertical dimensions in Mooney and Claypool. So it'll be interesting to see, one, how they deploy them, and two, how defenses react to that. Because I don't think defenses right now, with the fact that the Bears don't throw it a lot and seemingly don't want to throw it a lot as Fields kind of develops incrementally, it'll be interesting to see if defenses say, wait a second, yeah, they don't throw it a lot, but the last thing that can happen is getting beat over the top. So I'm very curious to see how they deploy Claypool and Mooney, two guys that can, take the top off the defense.
What did you call them? Vertical what?
What did I say? Vertical dimensions? Did I say that?
Vertical dimension, yeah. Two guys that bring vertical dimension.
Yeah, that's what they are. I mean, both guys can run.
Let's talk Roquan Smith while we're talking Bears.
Yep.
To the Baltimore Ravens. We have the debate about off the ball linebackers a lot. And clearly, maybe in part because of their history, it's a position that the Ravens really value.
Yeah, and they have Patrick Queen, who's a good player, and they really have not been able to find that second, for want of a better term, stacked backer to go with Queen. And it's as you said, it is a position they value. So they made the trade. Now, obviously, Smith makes a lot of tackles. The big question, and I'm sure this is a debatable point amongst many different people, is Roquan Smith an impact off-the-ball player? Is he in the category of the Fred Warners in the league? I would argue, based on tape, he's not. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's that kind of player. I think he's, like I said, he's an upgrade for them without question, because they didn't really have one. They were playing the veteran journeyman who's, wherever he goes, he plays, Josh Bynes. But yeah, obviously Roquan Smith is far better than Josh Bynes, but I'm just not sure Roquan Smith is that level of playmaker. Now, I bet that the Ravens know that, but he's still an upgrade for them. And as you said, that's an important position for them. And he will be used in multiple ways. He will be used as a blitzer. Maybe he'll become that kind of player depending on deployment, because he can blitz. He certainly tackles. We'll see. We'll see how he's used. But I think up to this point, his tape reflects a really solid player and a good player, but not one of those special impact off the ball backers.